I didn't know what the theme song was to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Charles. I do really like that movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it was one of the most technologically advanced films made at the time because, you know, I think it came out in about 1987 or 1988.
I think it was 97.
I say no way.
We will have to check.
We'll check. But I remember it was one of the last films to do all of its visual effects optically. And it's pretty advanced visual effects. So that film and Back to the Future 3 might be the most advanced optical visual effects films ever made, both directed by Robert Zemeckis.
I knew that.
And I almost had an opportunity to be the stereographer on Robert Zemeckis' most recent film about the French guy who walked across the two towers of the World Trade Center. But I had a meeting at Sony with one of the executives to show him a film that I had shot. And he said, "This looks absolutely terrible," ended the meeting and threw me out. Months and months later, I saw that same guy at a tennis club in Los Angeles, and he ran over to tell me that he found out the television in his office was broken. So that movie might have been totally different had...
that's a Curb Your Enthusiasm Jason Goodman edition.
That's not a good story.
Actually, it is a good story.
Well, it's one of the things that contributed to the end of 21st century 3D. Boy, I hope your color is okay, Charles. It's, let me make sure we've got our, yeah, you look good to me. How's it going?
It's going well. The art department has once again outdone itself.
Thank you.
For those who can't tell, that is the great bar there in being kissed by Donald Trump.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know how you whipped up that image of Trump, but it's fantastic.
Well, what I do is, you know, I start with obviously the original movie poster and I try to put things in there. It's in the original poster, it's Roger Rabbit kissing, I forget what the detective's name is, but of course the film is about humans interacting with cartoons, so we chose to make the president the cartoon character in this one, but we've got all of the people who were potentially involved in framing Donald Trump, and this guy snuck in there, interestingly. We'll have to see what that is all about, but I think most people are well aware that Mr. Epstein has been arrested and will be arraigned tomorrow here in New York.
Indeed, and we've got a lot to say about that in a bit.
Yeah, so yeah, we can jump right into things. You know, I'm not sure if I had shared this with you, Charles, but you know, I've just created crowdsourcethetruth.com and crowdsourcethetruth.org as standalone web pages. Previously, those URLs just brought people to the Facebook page, but now there is a standalone web page for Crowdsource the Truth that people can visit. It allows you to easily access the Facebook page, the Twitter page, the Instagram page. I know you're a big Instagram fan, Charles. YouTube, of course, people can choose to become a monthly sponsor either on Patreon or Subscribestar, or people can become one-time sponsors. I've put some links here to PayPal for bronze, silver, and gold sponsorship. It's important that people selecting these options recognize that they're sponsoring the show, but there's no benefit that they're going to get from the PayPal payments. They can't access the subscriber-only shows. That's a feature I hope to add in the future, but my website creation abilities are rather primitive, so this is kind of a not sophisticated website, but it's there for people to access.
Well done.
Thank
well
you.
done.
And with that, we could just get right into the slides if you're ready.
Sure. I believe I'm ready, but we'll find out.
That's right. You're born ready, I thought.
So we've got a lot of new information that came out in the last 7 days, and we try to do our best to summarize and then to try to explain the significance of this new information as quickly as possible. But when we think back now over the long number of broadcasts that we've done, where we've looked at periods going before 1997 all the way back to 1988, there there's a bigger picture here, I think, about what happened in 2016. It's not merely that the swamp was trying to train its gun sights on Donald Trump. The swamp was getting real happy and real swampy with the approach of, these pesky little elected officials. They don't really matter. Even the Supreme Court doesn't matter. We're behind the scenes with our deep state. We know what they're saying. We know what they're doing. We know where their problems are. And we have leverage, in summary, over all of the actors inside America and around the world. So we kind of like that approach. And we'll let these other people go and waste their time running around thinking that they actually control the presidency or the Senate or the Supreme Court. And then once they get into their new post, we'll kind of show them some pictures, we'll let them know what's really going on. And this is really not a small battle here. This is a life and death battle. It's a battle against the Death Star, which Donald Trump is. He is the Death Star for the deep state.
But wait a minute, Charles. I thought Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was in charge. Is that not correct?
Yeah. She's barely in charge of her apartment. No, but seriously, this was a plan, and we're going to show you why I'm so adamant today. This is a plan that began even before Donald Trump announced. This is a plan that has its roots in the fact that everyone knew that John McCain was never going to be president in 2008. So well before the November 2008 election, Team Obama, Team Clinton, and others, and the money behind Team Obama, Team Clinton, and to a related extent Team Bush, positioned themselves to survive and prosper in what they thought was not just going to be 8 years under Obama, but maybe a further 8 years under a Democrat, and if they got really lucky, a Republican would never hold power again. That was really their game plan. And you see that when you start thinking critically about the decisions that Barack Obama made early on to appoint Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. I mean, it was a knockdown, drag-out fight. Bill Clinton said some really horrible things at crucial moments against Barack Obama in South Carolina.
Like what?
In South Carolina, I think when Barack Obama won, he tried to say, it's nothing. Jesse Jackson won in South Carolina. What does that matter? It doesn't show us anything. It was really. I think he also made that comment to either Ted Kennedy or around that time that what did he say? Something like 10 years ago, that guy would have been bringing us coffee.
I thought that was Joe Biden who said that.
No, that was Clinton.
Damn, not PC.
Not at all. So. But this was, when you fall in, when you allow yourself on the left or the right to fall into a debate of everyone on the right is evil, everyone on the left is evil, the deep state wins. Because the deep state wants you to be distracted. They want you to waste your time on caring. They love it. The more you're distracted, the more you don't notice the rivers, the oceans of dirty money that are flowing around the world, all these investment projects that nobody seems to know anything about. They don't want you to notice all the money that just disappears, whether it's out of the stimulus program in 2009-10, the nearly $1 trillion stimulus that didn't create one stupid job. I mean, that's really epic that you could spend almost $1 trillion and not be able to create one job.
Exactly. How do you spend $1 trillion? I mean, that's pretty bad. I mean, they open a few restaurants.
And maybe that's why de Blasio's wife is, sure she's going to get away with, walking off with, I think, what was it, $800 million is missing out of some billion-dollar program that she's in charge of?
When I was watching that debate with de Blasio, I thought to myself, the only thing that qualifies this guy to run for president is that he's got like the right-shaped head and haircut. Everything else is bad.
And he's tall.
Right.
But he can't dunk, probably.
Good head, but nothing in it.
Can't dunk.
No.
So when we think about this, and we think about that, it's really reached a place where the mainstream media will not touch the heart of the story. They don't want to examine the Clinton Foundation, the Obama Foundation, the obvious criminal solicitation and operation of these false frontiers. They don't want to go there. It's the independent media, you and others in the independent media that have been leading the charge on this, and thankfully, it's also governments around the world that have been looking at this and waiting for the right moment to make the obvious call, which is to land on the Clintons and anyone who would emulate the Clintons and go after the people who profited from this rampant criminal conspiracy, taking aim at the donors, the private foundation donors in particular, the Gateses, the Rockefellers, et cetera, who have tens of billions, hundreds of billions together, trillions if you count it all around the world, that are locked down in these foundations and that better not go missing from inside there. So you've got this big, gigantic honeypot out there waiting to be attacked, and everyone, myself, you, many in the crowd, are all wondering what the hell is taking so long. And I think we're going to find out that one of the reasons it's taken so long for Donald Trump to do this, beyond the obstructions posed by the resistance in the early days, is that when they got into this and when they followed the trails that others and we have laid out for them, they said, my God, it's not just charity fraud. It could be sex trafficking. It could be money laundering. It could be aiding and abetting terrorist activity. It could be treason. It could be a whole bunch of things. So you don't want to let the group off here with just a wrist slap if, in fact, it is this gigantic conspiracy, perhaps even bigger than we've assumed.
Yeah.
So the question that we've been posing is just how crooked have these people been, and for how long have they been crooked? I mean, many people still to this day revere on the right George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. People on the left obviously think Barack Obama walks on water, and you can go back into time, and I'm sure around the top of both parties there are many, many examples of people devoting themselves in theory to public service, but in reality using that argument as an excuse to pocket as much dirty money as they can in crooked deals that they should never have had access to in the first place, but get access to because of their political ties. And so we're, I think, heading now towards a very hot summer around the world, starting tomorrow with Epstein's arraignment. Well, let's arraignment. I mean, let's hope he survives that arraignment.
Perhaps we could orchestrate an arrangement for it, and that way when he comes out, there'll be music playing.
I meant arraignment.
Yes.
Anyway, so with that, I see you continue to get some new subscribers and viewers.
You know, there's been some shenanigans going on, Charles. Did a show this morning specifically about social engineering, and you know, this number has actually gone down, I think, from where it was last week. So it's very strange behavior how these subscribers go up and down, very uncharacteristic of what has happened in the 2 years prior. So there has been someone who has said that there are contacts within YouTube, that the social engineers that we speak about have the ability to manipulate things internally at YouTube. That's not terribly difficult to imagine, but I don't have any direct evidence of that. This is certainly strange, but this is our 166th show. Quite a few for people to go to the playlist here on the Jason Goodman channel on YouTube and take a look at that. Something else, Charles, that I have been meaning to remind people about is that, you know, Crowdsource the Truth 2 is an excellent resource for people to subscribe to, because if anything goes wrong with the main Crowdsource the Truth channel, they can pick up all the same videos and live streams on Crowdsource the Truth 2. And I hope that people will sign up to this backup channel, as well as Periscope and Facebook. That way, if we have any technical problems or people try to strike the channel or whatever, there's an alternative there.
Cool. So, actually, while we're on this,
Sorry,
it's okay. While we're on this, I just point out that for the 165 videos that are up so far, we have over 21,000 views of the playlist.
Yeah.
Not just, and so oftentimes people say to me, do you have any details? Are you sharing any details? Nah. Like, nah, not so much. But with each one of these shows, most of the shows, they're pull down slides. So maybe we should just do that again.
Let's take a look at how that works. So I do like to go through this stuff because there's a lot of people who maybe aren't that familiar with YouTube. But when you go to any of the Sunday with Charles videos, you will notice that just below the video, we have this little description of what is contained. And the thing I think that confuses people is that it has this gray show more that you have to first click before it shows you the link to each of Charles' presentations, and you can download them just by clicking this link, and it will take you right to the presentation. You can save it to your computer, print it out, however you choose to do that. They are there. This show more also reveals the links to the various URLs that people will need to sponsor the program, whether they want to go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. The show is supported by the viewers, so if people are enjoying it, I hope that they will choose to become sponsors by clicking on one of those links, and they can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.com to find more information about sponsoring the show.
Yeah, and as I was trying to explain to a few people that this approach is really different, frankly, quite different than even the best reporting that is out there on cable news or whatever.
I thought this was the best report.
Well, the people are more familiar with. In that, we marry up Jason's talents from Hollywood and from life with my experience giving board presentations and working on complex financial transactions. And what we try to do is not just say, here's the answer. If you want a here's the answer show, I mean, you can tune into ABC or NBC or CBS.
Rachel Maddow.
Or Rachel, I won't use the epithet. Rachel Roswell Maddow, as Sean Hannity likes to refer to her.
Why, because she's out in space?
Yeah, exactly. This is an effort where we try to share with you information that you should be seeing but likely are not seeing, and give you the chance to go and actually look at it for yourselves. We provide the links, we provide, in many cases, analysis of this detailed information just as it comes up. And we've been doing this now for so long that I and I think Jason are both quite comfortable with the source material and with the body of material. So we believe we know what to look for. That does not mean that we have all the answers, and we welcome constructive suggestions from the viewers and listeners, and we're getting a lot of those, and thank you for them. You can reach us at our Twitter accounts and through my site. But what we try to do, as I say, is to give you the ability to look at what we're seeing for yourself and say, hey, hang on, here's the law, here are the facts. This is a criminal conspiracy. Why aren't people doing things about it?
Yeah.
And so what's been happening now, there are several people who've been working on this from the very beginning with their government officials around the world, more than a handful of people who know this material, are circulating it to people in a position to do something about it in their countries. We really welcome that. We appreciate all that. And as I say, we also like constructive suggestions, which if you send them to us, please try to keep them to less than 250 words, i.e. one type page. Because with all that we're doing now, I try to respond to every email I get, but I just cannot start reading tens of thousands of pages of suggestions, of unformed analysis, and to give you a reaction to it. I can't do it.
What about grammatical errors? Do you want a lot of grammatical errors in the lengthy emails?
I'm not perfect. One of the things I have never mastered is grammar and punctuation. I'm not really, so I'm forgiving about that.
You need an editor.
That's exactly right. I need an editor. I actually need a spoon feeder, but I do it my own way. Anyway, so with that in mind, why don't we jump right into the slides?
Absolutely.
All right, so this is the first thing. Tom Fitton over at Judicial Watch is really knocking the cover off the ball here. This is he's taking depositions under oath of many people who've been trying to avoid telling what actually happened. And he did release this on 5 days ago, where he got somebody, John Hackett, from the State Department to say, yeah, actually he had serious reservations about the approach the Clintons were taking when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And we'll get into why he would have had those serious reservations. But this article in particular gives you links to a whole bunch of the depositions and the facts. You can see what he's talking about. And Jason, you'll remember in the very beginning, one of the things I said is there's no way a new Secretary of State just rolls up prior to work and says, you know what, everybody else uses these government accounts. We're not doing that.
Think outside the box, people.
Exactly. Without that going right up to the President of the United States, or whoever the real President of the United States was, Valerie Jarrett or Barack Obama. It goes all the way up to the top, and somebody says, we approve it, or we don't approve it, or somebody says, we don't approve it, and they just go ahead and do it anyway.
Right.
So there's a lot. There has got to be a tremendous amount in the missing official records, and we'll get to some of that in a bit. There's so much information created that the people who keep track of records have latitude to say, well, there's this junk pile over here of 18 terabytes of data or whatever. We're not going to take all that and make it presidential records. Why don't we just make one?
Just the nude pictures of Bill Clinton.
Right. Exactly. The 17 terabytes over here, those will just disappear because they might happen to embarrass us a little bit. So let's burn that crap. Right. So this is fantastic news that Fitton has been doing this, and he's got a team, and they're regularly taking these depositions. And it tends to be a little bit of a lag as they take the depositions, they think about them, they write these articles,
transcribe them, yeah,
and then they release them. But clearly, Fitton and others at the top of Judicial Watch know a lot more than they're currently saying. And I would humbly suggest that we are really barreling close to the finish line now when we get this kind of stuff out there. Wait, stop for 1 second.
Sure.
He had concerns regarding Catherine Duvall, an attorney who worked for the Office of Legislative Affairs, and who was also involved in the Obama-era IRS scandal.
Ooh.
She's the same. Catherine Duvall was the one tasked to see whether the Clinton Foundation, the Hillary Clinton emails that were turned over were actually all of them. And she was also the person tasked to see whether Lois Lerner attacked Tea Party conservatives. Does that seem a little bit odd to you? That just, of all the attorneys in the world, you would have the same person work.
Is that her?
I think so, yeah. You'd have the same person working on these two cases, which I said from the very beginning to Jerry Corsi when I spoke to him in late April of 2015. He asked me, how do you think they got this done at the Clinton Foundation, covering up the Clinton Foundation? I said, it's the opposite side of the coin to the Lois Lerner scandal. It's the same idea. You game the system, and you have the people in charge of deciding who gets prosecuted. You corrupt them, and you make sure that you prosecute your enemies, and you let your friends skate. That's the perfect deal here.
May I read you a bit of comedy writing
Sure.
from the Zuckerman.com website, which I guess is the law firm that Catherine Duvall works at? It says, discretion and judgment are the hallmarks of Kate Duvall's practice.
Yeah, right. Did it leave out the words lack of?
Right. Yeah. The best results in a government investigation or confidential settlement are frequently nowhere to be found, not on TV, in a newspaper, blogged about, or tweeted, but she'll make one for you.
That's right.
Like, oh, it's not going the way you like? No problem. Let's just smash a server.
Yeah, Catherine the Juice Duvall.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, so if we go back in, we have several pages on Jeffrey Epstein itself, but we'll just say here, if we go to the Zero Hedge story, this claims he has again been arrested. I don't know if that's true.
Well, there's been a lot of reports saying that. I first heard about this, oddly enough, from the Hollywood Reporter. They were about an hour ahead of Fox on this.
So we stop just here. This is allegedly sex trafficking dozens of minors in New York and Florida between 2002 and 2005. 2002 and 2005. Now that's precisely when the Clinton Foundation began its rogue international operations, 2002 to 2005. We have never gotten any sort of accounting of the breakdown of the travel expenses of the Clinton Foundation for 2002 to 2005. As in the travel office case, when Bill was President of the United States and they fired the travel department, there has to have been a lead travel contractor for the Clinton Foundation. There's, in my experience, working with and for many different firms, you always, and actually arranging airline mergers, you always make a decision as a company that has a big travel bill to go to at most 2 contractors, because you get one contractor. The one contractor back in the day in 2002 to 2005 can leverage down your costs enormously. I learned this actually when I was doing some work with GE, that GE had a deal where you paid bargain basement coach class, and they automatically put you in full business class.
Wow.
Because of GE's massive buying, right? They could go and say, at the beginning of the year, I'm either going to use United or American.
Right.
You know, and you're going to get
Give me some incentive.
or
right.
British Airways or whatever. You
Right.
know, and you get that kind of a deal. The notion that an entity that had no authority, the Clinton Foundation, to do any work outside of Little Rock, Arkansas, would be running travel expenses. I mean, unless Ubers and chauffeurs are really expensive in Little Rock, you know, why do you have travel expenses? You know, maybe your fundraising agents might have travel expenses, but except in your application to be a presidential foundation, you said you weren't going to use those. You said you were just going to do personal contacts. So explain why you have this high travel bill. And then explain how, if Epstein provided a jet for the Africa trip in September 2002, which
Who were you paying for the travel?
well, yeah, exactly. Why did you say you had expenses? But how did Epstein write the thing off? Did he just write off his out-of-pocket expenses? Did he attempt to did he say, well, you know, my jet normally rents out for X per day, and so I'm just going to claim this, you know, gigantic deduction on my personal taxes?
Which is also kind of screwy, isn't it, Charles? Because if you've got a jet that you're not using and you just write off the cost of it by letting somebody use, is that legit?
I don't know, but it certainly would have to be justified, and there's
a lot of ways it could be finagled.
Well, not if the IRS actually cared about it, because there are many lines on the foundation tax forms, but one of them is, did you receive any donated services or items for less than their fair market value? And you got to answer that question. So the fact that Epstein would now be taken into custody, on the one hand, is quite interesting, because it, you know, tags him back into the 2002, 2005 period. That's a long reach back. That's 17 years back. You know, I guess for sex trafficking, maybe there's a long statute of limitations. But
I would think.
If you're anybody who visited Epstein Island, if you're anybody who flew around the world with Jeffrey Epstein, if you're anybody who may have done anything that's over the line, and let's say you're still married to somebody, you are quaking in your boots right now.
Yeah.
Because who knows what insurance files Jeffrey Epstein has to protect himself. I don't think he would have gone down this track of managing money for other people, supposedly, where there are rules about that.
While being a pedophile pimp.
Sex trafficking. I mean, you're not going to go down that track without having insurance files, you know, i.e. videos of people who shouldn't have been doing things,
Right.
or and maybe using that as leverage in the past. So that guns would be drawn here, literally, to go after and arrest this guy at Teterboro Airport as he's, you know, landing on his private jet from a trip back from Europe. He was probably in a cocoon, he thought, of safety. Now you get arrested at Teterboro Airport. Contrast this with Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin and Heather Samuelson and all these people, you know, telling Comey, you know, this is the way in which we're going to be interviewed. Yeah. You know, you don't have to show up. Just send that Peter Strzok guy. You know, he can ask the questions. We got him dead to rights. With, you know, some people may have his messages with Lisa Page. We have actual videos. You know, I'm just making that stuff up. So you contrast the deference that the Clintons, Bill and Hillary, and for that matter the Obamas have gotten with this decision to go and basically take this guy by the collar to put him directly into prison. And have
but that's a radical change from how he's been treated so far.
I'm saying, so there's something is clearly up. And
Yeah.
now you go back into last week and you hear, remember what Trump did on Monday of last week? In the morning he referred to the Clinton Foundation as, quote, that disgusting foundation. Now, you could say a lot of things about the Clinton Foundation. I probably said most of them, but but to refer to it as disgusting, either it's an idle comment and not thought through, which is possible, or it's very thought through, with Trump knowing a lot about Haiti, Trump knowing a lot about these, the NXIVM cult and the connections of that cult to the Clinton Foundation and other cults to the Clinton Foundation. And it's the kind of thing you would say if you were any normal human being,
Yeah.
and you looked at some of these facts and then considered the career of this financier.
Oops. Sorry, that's for later. Yeah. Well, so Charles, I don't mean to get ahead of you, and I know you've got some more stuff dealing with this, but do we want to talk about this guy?
Yeah, can we just do that in the,
sure.
The next few pages? I just want to go through the high points, because actually that was my next point, actually. This is Alex Acosta. This is a story that appeared in, I guess today, in CNN, and people are running with this idea that, don't forget about Epstein. The person who really ought to be attacked here is the labor secretary, because he's the one who cut the deal, and and maybe he should be attacked, and maybe Trump's judgment or whoever suggested this labor secretary be put into the cabinet to replace the preceding one. Yeah, maybe those are fair questions, but against the disgusting circus that is Jeffrey Epstein's known life.
Yeah.
I don't think anything comes close for what we know about Acosta. Now, that said, the Miami Herald, and you met, I guess, one of the reporters, or?
Well, I met Josh.
Gerstein?
Yeah, Gerstein,
Politico.
but is he with the Miami Herald?
No,
I think he's
Politico.
with Politico, right. Yeah, people might recall when I went to there was an Alan Dershowitz hearing. There were a lot of people over there, but we can come back to that. Charles, this causes me to wonder, this whole appointment of Alexander Acosta. Has Trump been collecting a rogues gallery in his cabinet to just keep them close to him and eventually expose them and kick them out?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know who was chief of staff when Acosta was brought into the tent. I think it might have been Kelly. And I have questions now in hindsight about Kelly. I have questions about, obviously we all have questions about Sessions.
Yeah.
I think the Clintons and the people behind the Clintons and Obamas were very clever in thinking through not only, in theory, trying to win, but
Stuff in the cabinet.
who can we get in there who will at least give us a heads up and give us a chance to get ahead of the curve should tidal waves come our way. My information about Epstein, to the extent I have any, comes from James Patterson's book, Filthy Rich, and from a lot of reporting. And when we talked about it before, when you went to that court hearing, I am struck by the fact that you have on one side Dershowitz, on the other side you have that Boies, that lawyer.
Yeah.
What's his first name?
I forget his first. Richard, maybe?
No.
I don't know.
But whatever, it's David Boies, I think. David Boies. But anyway, those are two major league hitters. Boies has never been a professor, but Dershowitz has never been a practitioner. So you have one of the deans of the law practice, professional practice, then you have one of the deans of the punditry and the academic bar going head to head over this case. And I find it rather fascinating. There's got to be much more than smoke here. And when you start thinking about what has now happened before, in the Clinton Foundation case, I would say it's fascinating, it's absorbing and gripping, but I'm a numbers nerd. There's no obvious sex in the Clinton Foundation stuff.
What about Bill?
But you know what I mean. There's not this new strand that now has woven in to the saga. Now that the Epstein thing
Sex cults and
pedophilia, and a convicted sex offender now being attacked again. Here's this guy Epstein. I do not believe his life story. I just do not believe the idea that he went from not having a college degree to teaching at Dalton, which is a school that here in New York, Westchester, there's they call it the Ivy League, but there's a series of private schools. I went to one, Horace Mann, and Dalton's another one. There are a few others, and we would have the graduates of Horace Mann would look down our nose at Dalton, and Dalton might look askance at Horace Mann people. But the one thing you would say is that at all these schools, they have the money to hire people who actually went to college, and their goal is try to take these children and get them into the top colleges. They're not trying to, like, you don't pay, now Horace Mann I think is $60,000 or $65,000 a year, and mind you, that's for many years. Horace Mann starts in kindergarten, goes to 12th grade. You don't pay that kind of money for because you want your child not to go to college, right? You want your child to go to a top college, and you're not going to get to a top college plucking some guy off the street who has never been to college who's going to teach you physics.
But Charles, he has the Harvard shirt. He must know something.
Yeah, he knows how to go into a place and buy a Harvard shirt. So, I distrust. So far the narrative, if you're going to sick these really tough investigators, maybe there are none of them left at the FBI, so you have to get retired people. But you sweat Jeffrey Epstein into a room and say, listen, bub, we're going to go back over your life story from the beginning. Okay, we're going to start with where were you born? What's your real name? Is it even Epstein? Who were your parents? Just to really sweat the guy. And then, okay, why did you decide in the 60s, at a time where, people who wanted to have a shot at life would go to college, not to go to college? Why did that happen? And
Charles, I think people want to see the formation of the CBI, the Charles Bureau of Investigation, because as I'm listening to you, I want this questioning to happen.
It would be good. It would be good. I'm sure there are better questioners to ask. So you start there and you say, okay, Bub, why didn't you go to college? Then how did you get the job? How did you land the job at Dalton? Were you really teaching at Dalton, or were you just one of a number of people who signed up to tutor children who needed extra help at Dalton? I mean, we were formerly on the faculty at Dalton. People have gone fast and loose calling Barack Obama a law professor when he was never a law professor. They've gone fast and loose saying that he was headed up the Harvard Law Review when he never did that. He was the person who leads the intellectual content of the Law Review is the editor, not the president. The president is a business manager. Okay, and people with the credentials of those they want to inflate, they say, yeah, you could do that. But if you get a comma wrong in your resume and you're a conservative, oh boy, that's a huge problem.
Right.
So,
Charles, just briefly about Dalton. I've known actually several people throughout my life who went to Dalton. Growing up in New York.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, what I was going to say, all seriousness, they have, in my experience, all been basically rich and maniacs. They become drug addicts, and a lot of them are, attractive and very style conscious and a little bit more sophisticated than you might expect someone. High school students in New York City, particularly wealthy ones going to elite schools. This is like a playground for a pedophile to...
Right, not just, well, to be fair, Horace Mann, when I was there, it turned out it was a playground for pedophiles, that there were a whole bunch of teachers who including arguably the headmaster, who hit on students while I was there. That's been in the New York Times. There have been massive settlements. That doesn't mean it's right, but I will tell you, because I was there, that we all had suspicions about certain teachers and why was this kid sleeping over at the headmaster's house, is not married, and why would his parents let him do that? And he seemed a little effeminate. And it's a little weird, and
It is. I think everybody's high school had something happening that was a little weird.
Right.
But now that everybody can publicize stuff to thousands of people with the click of a button, those health education teachers and golf coaches need to be careful about where they plan those camping trips.
But that's why a Trump would say that and when we think about it, you think about the Me Too movement, that's gone after Hollywood. People have not yet gone after academia, private schools and the Ivy League schools, and think about, go back into your life, remember what it was like when you were 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever it was, and you're at these places and you're wondering, why is it that this person who seems to be pretty much of an airhead got an A in this course?
Right.
How come I saw that woman out at the restaurant with the professor,
driving her home and stuff like that. There are always those relationships, but I guess, I don't know, when I went to high school, people didn't really think about it. They just sort of, I don't know.
Yeah, so this continuing on Epstein, so supposedly the story is while he was at Dalton, he went from Dalton to Bear Stearns as a traitor.
Seems like a weird move, too.
Well, it's possible that he did it, but I was just discussing with somebody who has more experience in trading than I do. But very, very few people spend time as a salaried person at a Bear Stearns or Dillon Reed, wherever I was, starting out with no money and quickly become a billionaire. Right. Very few people do that.
Well, and how many school teachers go transition to that and become billionaires?
And again, this is if there were a real FBI, you'd be asking the question, okay, Bub, let's go house by house. Show me how you financed the Orgy Island. Show me how you financed the mansion in New York. Show me how you financed, show me your tax returns. Show me how you amassed the capital to have all these jets, the Palm Beach thing, the New Mexico, maybe if you have stuff in Europe. Show me, we're going to go back through your financial records year by year by year. And I think when you do that kind of a study, you're going to discover that there's much more to this story, that perhaps Epstein is not just, it's not just him, that there are people behind him who said, this is pretty cool. We've got this guy who's gregarious, who has all these friends, who have a lot to lose and who have a lot to gain, if they work with us. Why don't we use this guy? And he's not the only person around the Clintons that, gets involved in these strange arrangements, be it NXIVM, be it the stuff out in Vancouver, the rumored parties we hear about in the UK and elsewhere. This kind of behavior seems to be more common, and let alone the allegations in the Pizzagate and all that kind of stuff. So I think something major has happened, and we're going to find out a lot more on Monday and afterwards, assuming Epstein survives this experience. We're going to find out a lot more about this, and it could be quite shocking.
Yeah, it's another indicator that although it was a bit slow, the worm seems to be turning, and President Trump seems to be taking control, putting his hands on the wheel, as it were.
Yeah, and then there's a story here. We have more on Epstein, but there's a story here. Before we get to the Epstein stuff, we're going to take you through some rather difficult questions that are going to be asked, I think. But here on Drudge, it turns out that the UK ambassador has been saying to back to home, Sir Kim Darroch, however you pronounce his name, has been basically sending cables to the words here, impugn Trump's character. This is from 2015 forward. Now, why is that important? Well, 2015 forward is precisely when I believe the plot to go against Trump was hatched.
Yeah.
Precisely when. This guy, as the way ambassadors work, I believe, we probably copy the British system, is that the ambassador of a given country in another country basically speaks for the president or the leader of that country. So this is a very senior guy doing this in 2015. You don't mouth off like this, unless a lot of people have decided that that's a smart thing to do. And clearly this guy was spending too much time drinking gin and tonics and not thinking through what was likely going to happen in 2016. He went all in for Hillary Clinton, thinking that it would work well for him. It didn't work, and now apparently he's continuing to make these very negative comments about Trump just at a time when the UK needs the US far more than the US needs the UK, considering Brexit and other things. Mm-hmm. So I think this is actually a good news, not bad news.
Yeah. Just dealing with some trolls, Charles. They love to interrupt what you're saying.
Cool. Sorry about that. Now let's see.
Now, Charles, someone in the comments is suggesting that perhaps Jeffrey Epstein will sing. I'm convinced he's going to be killed before he can say anything significant.
Yeah. I hope that he will not be killed, but I think he probably...
I'd like him to testify.
Yeah,
but
I would bet you that, I hope that the FBI and others are all over, before they arrested him, that they arrested him. They also, according to various stories, they swore out search warrants and executed them.
Ooh.
So, they're retrieving all kinds of information. This is a story, I didn't put the picture up, but sadly there was a guy who died in a helicopter crash in the Bahamas West Virginia. And this was sent to me by
The
somebody.
coal guy?
Yeah, exactly. This was sent to me by somebody who claims that that guy, a Republican, was also all in for getting benefits from the government, as are other top Republicans, like the Kochs and others. But this is quite an interesting piece here, very lengthy here. Chris Klein.
Yeah, I was speaking with David Hawkins about this at length, and we're going to be doing some shows about it. David's convinced that this was not an accident.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring that up. And here's this was sent to me by someone that's a newspaper I would have never even heard of, but it's quite lengthy, a lot of information, and I would encourage you and the viewers to look at it. But it's not uncommon. I mean, basically, when you run certain types of businesses, they're gating decisions. Do I get the mining permit or not? Do I get the extraction permit or not? Do I get the cell phone territory license? Yes or no? And do I get the zoning variance? Yes or no? And so people who can give those decisions, make those decisions in your favor, there's a market for them.
Right.
And sadly, there's a market for influence over them. So this one, I got to say, you know, Biden, I hope he stays in the race because he's so dumb.
He's just such a disaster.
I mean, he is so dumb. This one, he got in, I think, was it on Friday, where he says that the Obama administration never let interference happen
Right.
under their watch.
It's like, hello.
Okay, so now you want to testify for Trump, do you? I mean, it's like, I mean, this guy is priceless. And he thought, the amazing thing is you see him, and I have sympathy for somebody of his age running now with all his baggage, thinking that he can plow over Cuomo. But it's almost like, you know, a light maybe goes off or goes on in his head, and he thinks that he's really going to win the day by bringing this up. Bizarrely, in another, this interview or another, I think it was an NPR interview, he suggested that, you know, he's in the lead and other people better watch out because he has a whole bunch of information on everybody, and if they come up against him, he might let that information out. I mean, so now you want to admit there was no collusion and you were spying on Americans, and you have, as a private citizen, the benefit of that illegal spying, which you're going to use in this campaign, and that's not rigging? I mean, this guy, honestly, I would not trust this guy to mix an already prepared Bloody Mary and bring it to my, you know, table, let alone, you know.
You wouldn't have him babysit your grandkids?
Ixnay on that one.
Well, you could pet their hair and smell them and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
Joe Biden is going
Sleepy Joe.
nowhere. He's got a good tan, though. We'll give him that.
Yeah. Yeah, and now he calls him Trump has added the new moniker. He calls him now a reclamation project.
Joe?
Biden is a reclamation project.
That's good. He's
a
getting
good
more
one.
sophisticated with the insults.
Yeah. I wonder does he have, do you think, a director of insults?
No, I think those are homebrew.
He
for
just
sure.
wakes up and he's like,
just, you know, popping them off the dome. It's one of his, like, imagine a 15-year-old Donald Trump in the schoolyard.
ooh.
Oh, your mother is so, you know, he probably was quite good at that.
Yeah.
You see, Charles, there are a lot of trolls trying to stuff in comments here, but I am blocking them as quickly as they arrive.
Good.
Now, what are we looking at here? Did the
That,
video...
we can. That's just other stories.
Oh,
that
sorry. Yeah, that guy doesn't apparently know Joe Biden.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is the story. But here's Biden warning opponents that he has information he could let out about other people's past. This one here.
He better be careful, because I bet you Mr. Epstein knows some things about him.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, when we go back, and I won't go too far off topic here, but when we think about the rise of Twitter and Facebook and others, we think about how much personal information we willingly give away. We think about the dread possibility that actually the government is listening into phone calls, maybe a lot more phone calls than than we originally thought. And maybe the government's even, for those foolish enough to have Alexa and Ring and things like that, that they're, and these personal assistants, that they're basically monitoring your entire life.
Yeah.
We think about all that, and then we say, somehow this 76-year-old dunce is now threatening rivals.
Yeah, that's really
You know?
bizarre for him to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, this is called self-indictment.
Yeah, he should have just said, keep in mind, I still have access to all of that illegal espionage equipment. I mean,
Yeah, and our people are basically running those departments even now under President Trump.
right.
You know, so it's just really mind-numbing. Back in the old days, the chairman of each party, chairperson of each party, had enormous power and could say, "Joe, you're not running." You know, and in this case, I mean, by all means, let him keep running. I mean, but he is way past his sell-by date.
Yeah. Are they no longer able to say you're not allowed to run anymore? Or
I don't think so, because not only that, I think there's tremendous economic incentives to run. If you're a grasping person who can't make it in the real world, you just announce a campaign, a whole bunch of money ends up in your pocketbook. It's unclear what happens once you exit the race to that money. Do you have to give it back? Do you get to keep it? So there's a lot of, there are lots of incentives for people to go ahead with these quixotic, to put it politely, campaigns.
Excellent word choice, Charles.
There you go. So, yeah, this is a really dangerous story. Remember how Trump was saying Norway? Let's say a nation in Norway?
I caught that and was quite intrigued by it, Charles. What do you want to tell us about that?
Well, here we have this story comes out yesterday that that a top minister in Norway is basically going after male asylum seekers, looking for sex with male asylum seekers in Norway. I mean, this is when we think about, people are fond of saying that governments need to get involved, deciding, how much Coca-Cola you drink and how much this or that you drink.
It's like, hey, you want asylum? How about oral sex? How does that conversation go?
But in the area of disaster relief and refugees, and I bring this up to tie it back to Epstein, governments really need to be the people who are involved in trying to help vulnerable people, victims who have fled their country because they don't feel safe anymore. They go to Norway, of all places, from the Middle East. Not the first place I'd pick if I were used to sand and heat, but because I believe it gets kind of cold for most of the year in Norway. And you find yourself in Norway, and it's not like the blue helmets, the UN soldiers in the middle of Haiti. This is the minister. The top guy says, I make the final call here. You want in? This is what I want. The minister's doing this and nobody noticed?
Right. I mean, that's what I mean. How does that guy expect that that's not going to get found out?
Well, because evidently in Norway, it wasn't until recently an inside game. I mean, how does Norway get away with giving billions and billions of US dollars to UN and Clinton Foundation and other programs that just evaporate? There's no reckoning for it. You get these imprecise reports back from a conflicted firm of boffins based somewhere in the wilderness in the UK, who write you a 300-page glossy report full of platitudes and aspirations and stuff like that, never explaining what happened to your $15 million. Just like, well, we increased child literacy by 62%. Okay, but what happened to my $15 million? Don't you like the report? It's really pretty. You can have another copy. I mean, anyway, so it's really, I hope a reckoning is near in places like Norway and in the whole area of regulating charities that claim they are providing relief from natural disasters and to the vulnerable children especially.
Yeah.
So we have a drama that's going to happen. It's started already, actually, that in Europe this afternoon, Deutsche Bank revealed its plan, and they are apparently going to fire a large number of people suddenly.
Oops. But probably not any of the people that are involved in money laundering, because they need them to stick around. They got a lot of dirty money there still.
Well, Deutsche Bank has always been a troubled place, and particularly so after they bought Bankers Trust, which I would argue was a troubled place. And so, because it is so big, because it is a flagship financial institution in Germany, because Germany is all in for the Euro project, and Merkel and her people love it. The notion that Deutsche Bank would be so close to a meltdown, and indeed could trigger a meltdown. When you have a bank this big that has to, by definition, trade with every other big bank, you think your balance sheet's good, but you don't know what contingent liabilities you may have if Deutsche Bank's credit suddenly evaporates and if the German government can't step into the breach alone. So I would watch this very carefully. Maybe it's a non-issue. It'll be testament to Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve if it becomes a non-issue. But it's certainly something that people in the finance land are talking nonstop about, waiting to see what will happen tomorrow morning. When you wake up early in the morning, you're going to want to check bank stocks and see whether they're fine, flat, or in the red.
How will that affect people in the United States, you think?
So one big interconnected world. Actually, the 2007-8 crisis began in 7 with a Swiss bank, UBS, and a fund of its, actually called the Dillon Read Fund. It was had nothing to do with where I used to work. It was just they liked the name, so they put it on as a name.
Wow.
Melted down in mortgage-backed securities, and that unsettled credit conditions. We never recovered from that, and ultimately what really tanked the system, or nearly tanked the system, was not only AIG, but it was a regional German bank and a bunch of savings banks in the UK that were totally mismatched. They had massive liabilities and their assets were not worth par. And they just, there and in Ireland and other places just went out of control quickly. The thing that is different, most people, I won't go into a long lecture on finance, but in the United States, we are a very rich country, we do have a lot of debt, but our banks are massive and they have access to all of us, customers who maintain checking deposits with either no interest or low interest. So the cost of funds for US banks is very low, whereas the banks in Europe and some other countries are quite large and don't have the domestic customers available to provide these checking deposits. And so they get in the business of saying, we want to be as big as an American bank.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the
cheat everybody just like they do.
No, but we have to pay for our deposits. So there's a market for that, and we start saying, well, we'll pay 3%, pick a number, for this deposit because we're going to make 6% on this loan. Only they decide to lend money to, let's say, Iran or to a place that doesn't make any sense at all, like Zimbabwe or Venezuela, and they keep it at par. And something like this happens, and it just comes crashing down very suddenly.
Now, Charles, I don't mean to redirect to something that maybe is beyond the scope of this show, but is a mortgage-backed security the same as a collateralized debt obligation?
A collateralized debt obligation is a broad category that would include a mortgage-backed security. In other words, you have some form of collateral, and you say, my collateral is worth X, and now I want you to lend me money against my collateral.
Right. But isn't that what caused the crisis in 2008?
It was a mixture of things. We had too much debt. We had a mismarking of the values of the collateral. We had a sudden loss of confidence. We had many years, some would argue decades, of bubbles inflating around the world. We had criminality.
No, we still got that.
And it's still, we still don't know the whole story of what actually happened 2007 through 9. That's a story.
Maybe Hillary should write a book.
Another one. But we'll close with this thing. Somebody sent it to me. I hadn't realized that Hillary was quite as close with Saul Alinsky as this would suggest she is. If you can, I don't know if you can get this.
So what this is?
This is letters back and forth to Hillary, the young Hillary, to Saul Alinsky. If you,
how do we?
It says download PDF.
It doesn't seem to want me to do that. This?
Yeah, download.
Oh, there we go. Download as a start. Got it. Okay, there we go.
All right. So if we make it a little smaller, maybe.
Dear Saul.
Okay, this is Alinsky's secretary writing back
Wow.
to the young Hillary, who's living at 2667 Derby number 2 in Berkeley, California. Dear Miss Rodham. Now, if you go to, look at Hillary's letter, which is the next page.
Is it
This is
gushing?
her. This is,
Written on a typewriter.
yeah. July 8th,
1971.
1971.
I wasn't even alive yet.
I was. But you read it, and it's this gushing letter of, you know, what does it say? You are being, I seem to have survived law school slightly bruised.
Oh, really?
Now, what is, remember, I pointed out before that, and I've checked this, it takes 3 years to go through Yale Law School. She took 4 years. And that story doesn't make sense to me, that you would take, you know, I know very few people, and I know quite a few lawyers. I don't think I know a single one who took 4 years to get through a 3-year
Really?
course and then failed the bar exam. You know, I mean, that's
She's the smartest lawyer in her office. Actually, that's not even true.
right, exactly. But you know, this is a warm. She obviously knew Saul Alinsky, and if you go back, I miss our biennial conversation. So every 2 years.
Wow.
Do you ever make it out to California? Let me know. You know.
Crank caller on this number, Charles.
Well, this is here are my digits. Although she
Right.
didn't say that. And there are rumors of you going to Southeast Asia to recruit organizers.
Organ harvesters. Look at her phone number.
Fine, there you go. But I mean, this is. I hope you're still well and fighting. You know, hopefully we can have a good argument sometime in the near future. Until then, 1971. Now she graduated. When did she graduate? Was it
6 cents to mail
12.
a thing
12?
with Franklin Roosevelt. Mr. Saul Alinsky.
And look, we've got to look into this Industrial Areas Foundation. So he's working in a foundation as well. I haven't really researched Saul Alinsky too carefully, but maybe the whole idea for the Clinton Foundation
was to emulate Saul Alinsky?
Maybe.
I think that's a good shot in the dark guess.
So we'll take a look at that. Anyway, I found this fascinating that she would be that close. I mean, it's not like just because you went to Wellesley, you automatically, and just because you wrote your thesis about Saul Alinsky, that you're suddenly in close touch with Saul Alinsky. But
yeah.
All right, so we can now go to the next page. And this is a very, very interesting set of facts that I think people are going to have to start explaining. The Forbes story, which you could pull up quickly, basically says a lot of people are scared. And this came out before the arrest, July 3rd, 2019, which is interesting.
Yeah. People in the comments were saying that Mike Cernovich's lawsuit, which was actually the thing I was there at the, I think it was the Second Circuit Appellate Court to attend, they're saying that played a role in Epstein getting arrested. Good on Mike Cernovich if that's the case. I definitely think this Epstein Island story is one that would not have gotten nearly as much traction as it has if it were not for the independent media along the lines of what everyone is watching right now.
Well, I don't know if you ever you had an experience like this, but I grew up, I should say I was raised around Washington Square Park, and you know, as a kid I used to, in the summer, play in the park, and after school play in the park. And I remember there really were, back in the day, people that were referred to as gypsies.
Yeah.
And I can remember my mother saying, don't ever play with a gypsy.
What is a gypsy?
Well, technically gypsies are descendants of people who left India and then ended up in Eastern Europe, primarily in Romania, and you know, then spread around the world. People call them Romany people. Actually, I went to a school with somebody, elementary school with somebody who, as it turns out, did not advertise himself as being a gypsy, but not only was he a gypsy, he was the son of one of the leaders of the gypsies, and a very nice guy. Somebody who does not like at all with his wife. It does not like the Clintons in the slightest.
Charles, I want to just show our audience something for a second here. I hate to distract from the show, but we've got an unblockable porno advertisement here. I'm hitting block user, and it's not blocking. Very odd how that could possibly occur, but for anyone who's wondering if YouTube is involved in some kind of shenanigans, how do we explain this? Porn nudie video full here seems to know somebody at YouTube that makes it impossible to block them.
Is that
Interesting.
obstructing what we see, or it's just showing up in the comments?
It's just annoying me and showing up in the comments and getting everybody all,
We beat up.
yeah. Sorry.
So it's okay. I'm sorry about that. So this, though, is quite interesting that we would have had, if we go back to the top of the story, we have Epstein in a Harvard shirt.
Yes.
And remember that one of the things that Dershowitz has been saying is that Epstein was a big donor to Harvard,
Yeah.
and that the reason Dershowitz was down on Epstein Island was to try to secure additional money going to Harvard. The question is, how many other Harvard types have been on Epstein Island? And I think that's something we're going to find, I assume we're going to find a lot out about.
People also might recall that when I spoke to Mr. Dershowitz, he claimed that he had been to the island but hadn't been on the jet, which means that either that handwritten flight manifest that we've seen is inaccurate, or Alan Dershowitz is lying. It'll be interesting to see which of those is the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think, though, when you're sitting there, going back to this question, don't play with gypsies, another thing is, you don't get into a stranger's car when you're like 10 years old, right?
Well,
or whatever. And you similarly,
unless it's Uber.
when some single guy who professes to be, a multi-billionaire says, I got an idea. Why don't you get on my jet? Don't check anything about my background, and why don't you go to my private island?
What could go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong with that? So, but back in 2016, if we punch this, these are two stories for people who want to check in to see the latest as of this morning concerning the arrest. There have been. I watched television actually early this morning, and somebody was quoted as saying that they had seen the indictment.
Really?
And I have not been able to find the indictment yet, the new indictment, but it'll be very interesting to see that. And the argument runs that he had an agreement that dealt with Florida, but didn't deal with his exposures in New York.
Well, but also, wasn't there a federal judge who found that the agreement was unlawful because it didn't consult the victims?
The victims, yeah, exactly.
So that's a problem for him, I think.
It's a massive problem. So if we go back to the Malia story, this one here, this is a story, just so people can see it, that
yeah, this is an interesting twist for sure.
That, this is a story that came out literally the day after Comey cleared Hillary.
2016.
Right. And
From
what it's
Malia
talking,
Zimmerman.
yeah, by Malia Zimmerman, and this is what it's quite lengthy. I took some excerpts out of it and typed them in, so if you didn't want to follow the link or couldn't follow the link, you'd be able to see the important pieces of it. But if you scroll down a little bit, what's super interesting here is that there's a 23-page letter just a little bit further down here. Jason, you see the date, July 6th, 2007. Okay, here's a letter that is in part that Dershowitz was involved with writing, where it extols. Why don't we go into the slide because it's less fuzzy. Yeah, these are the excerpts that came out. It says Mr. Epstein was part of the original group that conceived the Clinton Global Initiative.
Who wrote that? Dershowitz?
Dershowitz was involved in the drafting of this letter. Okay, and alleging bringing together a community of global leaders. Okay.
Global rapists.
Focuses of this initiative include poverty, climate change, global health, and religious and ethnic conflicts. None of that is true. In 2007, there was no Clinton Global Initiative. There was no legal entity called the Clinton Global Initiative in the United States. And this article by Malia asserts that the letter was written by Dershowitz and Gerald Lefcourt. And I actually, the closest I ever came to Alan Dershowitz, was just a side vignette. I was, it was Christmas season, and I was walking through Bryant Park, and this group, it was crowded as hell, and this group was just like looking here, looking there, right ahead of me, and they just suddenly stopped, ignorant of all the people who were around them. And I nearly said, would you get off your fucking ass and move in the right... Alan Dershowitz, like right there. So that's the closest I ever got to the guy. But on television, he comes across as somebody who understands the law pretty well. And he's somebody, if you got into trouble and you had the money to pay him, you might consider hiring to get you out of trouble. But he doesn't strike me as somebody who would say, yeah, the facts of the Clinton Foundation, F that. We don't care about the Articles of Incorporation. We don't care about the law. We don't care about whether it was actually, well, I'll just write this letter. And people will say, I'm Alan Dershowitz, I must be right. It doesn't strike me as behavior that he would engage in. But as we're going to show you in a second, this letter is as far off base as you can be. It's not even in, on Earth.
Not even in the stadium.
It's not even in this corner of the, the galaxy where Earth is. It's just in outer space. Malia, to her credit, says, the Clinton Foundation and Dershowitz would not respond to questions about this July 6, 2016, right? And then I love the final sentence. The foundation's raised, a paragraph, hundreds of $millions, but questions have arisen, and critics have accused the Clintons of using it as a slush fund. Now, this is at the time when I was on Fox a lot, so maybe she was thinking of me. But
we hadn't yet started this show,
right.
So there was kind of a lot less of this information out there in the world.
Exactly. So if you go to the next page, here are a few facts that somebody's going to have to explain. The Clinton Global Initiative, the first time I find it was a business development scheme. It could have been the Clinton Global Initiative.org, but if we hit this first link, and I don't know if it'll work, you should get the search results for www.clinton.globalinitiative.com. And you see...
I just figured out what these trolls are trying to do.
What?
They want me to accidentally click on their porn links and bring up some porn image on the screen here, which would happen if I do this incorrectly.
So can you hit this? I'm not... Yeah.
I'm working on it. I'm sorry for the delay, Charles, but this is the other thing that they're trying to do.
No worries. I just. So if let's spend a few seconds on this thing. This says it was registered by the Clinton Foundation in New York. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you go. This is the name ClintonGlobalInitiative.com, and you see the date. Important dates. What date was it created?
Was it November 15th?
What year? 2004. And why is that a significant date? The Clinton Presidential Library opened 3 days later. So here, somebody in New York registers the Clinton Global Initiative, and they hold a big party out in Little Rock from, I think, the 15th through the 18th. Costs a fair amount of money. I want to say like $2 million. All these world leaders and other people gallivanting out there in Little Rock. I think the idea for the Clinton Global Initiative, the formal idea, was triggered or launched with the opening of the Clinton Library. They saw the power that Bill Clinton had with his Rolodex, especially after John Kerry lost the 2004 election, and it was likely that Hillary would then be the presidential nominee maybe in 2007-8 timeframe. They saw the power of that, and they said, this is a time to set up the Clinton Grifters Initiative. We'll do that. We'll take this domain name. We're not going to bother to set up a legal entity. If you go into the and I haven't checked ClintonGlobalInitiative.org and others, but I don't know if I cover this. Well, just briefly, on the 18th of November, we've mentioned this before, that the Clinton Foundation signed, the president of the Clinton Foundation signed a document claiming that it was a presidential library. It received a final determination letter. They do this 3 days after they get the people in New York get this ClintonGlobalInitiative.com together. So if you had a real investigation, remember there was one open at the time, James Comey, and Mueller and Rosenstein had been involved one way or another in this investigation. If you had a real investigation as to how this Clinton Global Initiative came together, you would quickly see it was a fraud from the inception. And that rather than prosecute it when you could, the people in the FBI apparently said, we love this. This implicates more powerful people will have more power over the government if we let this proceed. So then on the 6th of July 2007, if we hit this zero hedge piece and remind people, this Kumiki Gibson bombshell dossier, or memorandum, is dated, I believe, in November 10th, 2008. But the work that she did, November 10th, 2008, the work that she had done here was clearly points to the fact that by July 6, 2007, the Clinton Foundation was dead. I mean, it had never had an audit, it had broken countless laws, nothing made any sense what they were doing, none of the reports made any sense. And here Kumiki goes through some of these issues, not all of them, because she didn't have the wherewithal, I guess, to do international analysis, just focus on domestic stuff. So we go back to the slide.
Charles, Rockstar is saying that Epstein had a Gulfstream 4 and a Boeing 707. That's interesting because you and I were having a conversation about that just before we started.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. So I have pointed out, and I'll just remind people, and if you go to this link, this one here, when you think about whether a charity is bona fide or not, you ask simple questions. Did it pass the organizational test? Was it organized properly on whatever date they claim it was fully organized? The answer is no Clinton Foundation entity was ever validly organized. Okay, if you fail the organizational test, you're dead. There's nothing you can do. You can't cure it by curing cancer or passing the operational test. You have to pass both tests. So they failed the organizational test, they failed the operational test, and this is, and textbooks have been written about this, and if Dershowitz himself didn't want to study this, he could clearly get people at Harvard Law School, students and others, to take him through, whether it's this memo or something else, and say, you know what, when I said I allowed my name to be used in connection with a letter dated July 6, 2007 that extolled the virtues of my client Epstein, saying he was so instrumental to the world for having created this Clinton Global Initiative and worked with the Clinton Foundation, I maybe should have checked my facts a little bit because it wasn't true in 2007 and it certainly isn't true today. So if we go back into the slide, we have this story, which we brought up in the past, but give, as they say, props to the people over at Scripps. They had done a couple stories before I reached out to them, and then they did more work, and they published this story on November 5th, 2016. They didn't really take this story because they didn't have the time, but they could have taken it a lot farther. But this story basically not only discloses that they had broken the solicitation laws actually for work starting in 2000, and that there were 3 cases in Mississippi where they had been disciplined. The Clinton Foundation, of course, says, well, this is just traffic tickets. Nobody cares about this. No, that's not true. You have to look at everything taken together. If in 2001 you were disciplined for this and nobody caught the fact that you didn't have an audit, then there are more serious problems than just the fact that you were disciplined in Mississippi. You have to look at everything taken together. So here, Scripps is doing important work on one set of violations. Then you go back to the slide, and this is for the benefit of Professor Dershowitz if he really wants to prepare himself. Then we look here, the top solicitation firm for the Clinton Foundation, which is this one here, Jason, settled with Pennsylvania in O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson. Now, O'Brien, McConnell, and Pearson is heavily involved in campaigns, in progressive causes. I haven't checked to see how much they may have been involved in various Hillary Clinton campaigns, Bill Clinton operations, and Democrat operations. But this is a settlement that has never been disclosed, as far as I could tell, to state authorities involving the principal fundraiser for the Clinton Foundation, alleging that they were fundraising in Pennsylvania in this time frame, February 13th, 97 to 99, 99 through 2000, and they basically agreed to a settlement here that they had been soliciting without registering later on. And we don't in this tie, it says there are 11 charitable organizations. The Clinton Foundation definitely paid this firm money to solicit. What we do not yet have, and what Comey and Mueller and Rosenstein should have been able to get when they were investigating the Clinton Foundation, it should have been too tough to say, all right, show us the agreements with any professional fundraiser. Okay, this one. Now, show us when you started soliciting in each of the states where you hired this firm. Show us why you paid this firm. Show us, what they said they did. Now prove to us that you actually registered the Clinton Foundation to solicit in each of these places. And of course, they wouldn't have done it properly. So you have the Clinton Foundation itself breaking the rules. You have its principal fundraiser breaking the rules. This, at least, is a solicitation agent's firm. You had an individual raising money. I won't get into his name. We'll save that for another show. Also without registering properly. If we go back to the slide, all this stuff is before Dershowitz writes his letter. And then, as Dershowitz was writing here in 2007, we'll show you here a link to Companies House in the UK. This beta site, this one, shows that the Clinton Foundation had illegally set up a subsidiary. If you hit filing history, they'd set this thing up. If you go down in the bottom.
Sorry, Charles, just 1 second.
No problem.
We're getting overwhelmed here by trolls, and this is what they're trying to do, is to affect the show. So what people need to do is they need to become sponsors of Crowdsource the Truth and let this person who is injecting these messages know that every time they send a stupid message that's intended to derail the show, it's only going to benefit Crowdsource the Truth financially, and eventually it will cause this social engineering attack to stop. This is not an accident. I believe I know who's doing this, and it only appears on Sundays on your show, Charles, because they know this is an extremely popular show that people like to watch, and they feel they can disrupt it. But what we need to do is we need to send a message that that disruption is only going to make this organization stronger. So please, everyone, get on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth, and let's collectively send a message to the joker who keeps injecting these chat comments that no matter what they do, they aren't going to stop this program, and their idiotic behavior is just going to make me money. All right, so what did we want to do?
If we could go down this page a little bit. In 2007, as Dershowitz is trying to write a letter, if you go to the very bottom, you see July 10th, 2007 shows, this is before Dershowitz writes the letter, they illegally set up a subsidiary, the Clinton Foundation does in the UK, alleging that they have authority to fight HIV/AIDS and climate change and things like that, which they do not have that authority. And they do this, Bruce Lindsay and Andrew Kessel and a lawyer do this across state lines, falsely filling these documents out inside the UK. It'd be one thing to do it just in the UK, but for good measure, they do it in Canada, and they do it in India that I know of so far. I would guess, as we check into this more and more, if the real FBI would look at this hard, you're going to find out that they have done this in country after country after country before Dershowitz writes his letter bragging about the great work that Epstein, Dershowitz and his colleague write the letter trying to get Epstein off the hook in the settlement negotiations.
Where is this real FBI you speak of, Charles?
I know.
I have not seen such an entity.
Yeah, in Seinfeld reruns.
Yes.
So if we, yeah. Now, this is interesting here. I just picked this story up. This is a story that I was looking for the Scripps thing, and here's a story in the Mississippi Democrat. Now, that could be a neutral or the Natchez Democrat. What happened to the Clinton Foundation? Okay,
That's a good title for a book.
But it's pretty interesting because, I mean, maybe the Natchez Democrat is not a Democratic-leaning publication. It's just a historical name. But if you go to it, the sum and substance of the story is they came in December 2014. They made all these promises about improving things in Mississippi, have a meeting in May of 2015. But in essence, nothing happened. The Clinton Foundation has invested very little in this project. It should have funded the project. You know, was it political maneuvering for Hillary Clinton's failed presidential aspirations, or simply a hustle? One thinks of Haiti when it comes to the Clintons. This is in Natchez, Mississippi, in the Natchez Democrat. So people are, you know, where maybe you could say back in 2007, all right, we'll forgive lifelong Democrat and Hillary friend, and Bill friend, Alan Dershowitz, for immediately saying, yeah, I'll write a letter, you know, praising the Epstein because of his great work with the Clinton Foundation. Maybe you forgive that in 2007. You certainly don't forgive that in 2019. And Alan Dershowitz has to be called to account. His lawyers have to be called, his colleagues have to be called to account. What diligence did you do on the Clinton Foundation when you wrote this letter in 2007 that you put before a judge arguing for leniency for Epstein? And what is your opinion now of the Clinton Foundation? You know, what do you claim? Explain all the good work that Epstein did for the Clinton Foundation, 2002 to 2005, 6, 7. What exactly did they do, based on your knowledge and belief, Alan Dershowitz? Those are tough questions for him. And you go back into the slides. We have, this is really fascinating stuff. If we hit the second link here, I put it, Michael Smith has done enormous good work. But in 2016, Michael Smith, who's originally from Australia, provided a list right before the election of all the stories he had done challenging the Clinton Foundation. And if you could just scroll quickly through it, you'll see at the bottom, it's like 43 different stories.
Sorry, Charles, I'm just trying to, what they're also trying to do is, remember that time they overwhelmed the show and took it off the air?
Right.
So I gotta just stay on top of that. Where are we going in this story?
So this is just a list of all the stories with links to each one of them.
Whoa.
That he did. 43 stories between 2015 and September 15th, 2016.
See, they're screwing up the show because I'm not looking at the screen. I'm getting very irritated. And this is YouTube. Sorry, let me not talk about it because that's also what they want.
So on the one hand, this is just one example. There are journalists and people in other countries who've gotten into this. If we go back to the slide,
it's a lot of stories from our friend Michael Smith.
Yeah, he's done great work. But this is a story, interestingly, this one above it, which basically says that by mid-2008, the board at the Clinton Foundation, remind you, this is July 2008, so Hillary's out, she's not going to be president, but this is a story that they became aware of a $23 million, he says deficiency, but it's really, somebody stole $23 million from the Clinton Foundation.
I'm surprised it wasn't 33.
Yeah. But if you go down the page a little bit, this shows you, this is from a political story, but anyway, there's a lot in here, but the sum and substance is that by July of 2008, so when Barack was on a glide path to beat McCain, they became aware, and you go down, here's the actual memo from Maura Pally. They became aware that Ira Magaziner and others had lost $23 million. So how do we cover it over? What we do is we say, well, we'll cover it over by taking money from a quasi-endowment, i.e. a slush fund, and just, what we lost over here, we'll say we found over here, and we'll make the books work. We'll just hire BKD. They'll do whatever you want, BKD will cover it over. But this is this is a pretty damaging memo, 11 February 2015, to the former president, and his daughter. Notice Hillary's not on this letter.
Why is that?
I don't know. Yeah, 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 here, see, look at this. In July, keep going up the bit. Here we go. In July 2008, Ira Magaziner, Chai's CEO, and Anil Soni, Chai's president, informed the Clinton Foundation that Chai, then a part of the Clinton Foundation, which contradicts your application for federal tax exemption, had been using grant funds from restricted grants to fund other Chai programs. This practice had resulted in Chai overspending its financial resources by over $23 million. The Clinton Foundation was forced to use almost all of the funds it had set aside to begin an endowment to, quotes, they even put it in quotes, to restore the $23 million. I mean, this is bold fraud, right? And this memo is out there. It's been out there now for years. Real accountants, tough FBI investigators need to look into this and say, hang on, how many people knew about this? Erskine Bowles is no slouch. He's a smart guy. You know, he should have looked at this and recoiled in horror and said, this is an epic fraud. You can't use money for restricted funds to do something that's not authorized internationally with no legal authority and then say, oh, we better not let this out in the public domain. We'll just cover it up.
Well, we lied because we knew the truth would upset you. That's okay, right?
So if you go back into the slide, this is this Clinton Foundation list of the Clinton Global Initiative initiatives. We've been through this before, the commitments to action. Browse through our current list of commitments to get baked, I mean, not inspired, to go to jail. I mean, it's, you look at these commitments to action, what they say are
baked.
You know, it's just, now they have something new called the CGI Action Network on post-disaster recovery. There is no such legal entity. You can't just, you know, it's not like when you're in politics and you know, you're campaigning and you say, I know what we'll do, we'll have a teach-in, we'll have a love-in, we'll produce some posters, we'll go down to a park, we'll serve some food to people, you know, and we'll say that we're caring. And people, yeah, people eat it, smoke, drink, whatever, have a big old time, and we'll just write these reports. We'll get that same firm of Boffins in the UK to write another report saying how we've reduced teenage pregnancy by having this thing.
I thought Bill got a vasectomy and that was reducing it.
But anyway, I hope by now, because we've been bringing this up for 2 years, that the FBI has taken a list of every single one of these Clinton Global Initiative commitments to action and said, all right, this is what you said you did, what did you actually do, and cross-check it with the donors. What did the donors declare on their tax returns as money having been given? Who did they send the checks or wires to? And go thing by thing. Was this particular Clinton Global Initiative commitment to action, was it something that was charity or was it business development? If it was business development, who made how much money out of it? Were investment funds created by groups of caring green people to do green energy investments that made a billionaire another $400 or $500 million and gave that billionaire cover to say that that billionaire was, you know, left-leaning and a social justice warrior? You got to go through this. It's fact specific. You got to go commitment by commitment. Now, this is a link to the Clinton Foundation, from the Clinton Foundation site, purporting to be the application for federal tax exemption. It's a 350-page document. Real people in the FBI, Alan Dershowitz and others, need to go through this and say, now wait a minute. Here we claim, if we go slowly through it, we'll get to the bylaws. I don't know if they're signed or not signed. But people can go through this and they'll see that the entity was created on September 4th, 2009.
Where is that?
That's right. You're just doing it just perfectly, just slowly but surely, just let people see. It's a very lengthy document here with lots of attachments. But this document says, they're asked point blank, are you a successor organization to any other operation? And it says no. But you check the Clinton Foundation website, you look at the marketing materials, and it shows 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all moments where, according to the marketing materials, Clinton Foundation held Clinton Global Initiatives in New York City. In 8 after the election, they had the balls to set one up in China. And think about that. Hillary had been announced as the Secretary of State.
Well, they love China.
You're making it easy for the people to corrupt through the Clinton Foundation. You say, we're going to hold the meeting in Hong Kong in December 2008 so that you can bribe us efficiently without wiring the money back into New York. You could just get all your transactions done in Hong Kong under the control of the friendly Chinese government. And nobody said anything about this. Look at this. http ClintonGlobalInitiative.org. I showed you ClintonGlobalInitiative.com was set up November 15th, 2004. Here's another website.
Well, it's totally unrelated.
Yeah, right.
I didn't know they were talking to me.
That's right. Exactly. I did not have graft with that person.
Yeah.
Anyway, people can look at this, lawyers should look at this, but bottom line, this thing was clearly a successor organization. It has never filled out any paperwork properly. It's never gotten a legally compliant audit.
I thought you asked if it was a successful organization. I didn't know.
It's never disclosed the many private benefits that Doug Band and others have derived through the operation of this false front charity, including the Clinton family.
Yeah.
So if we go back to the slide, believe it or not, this will not be a 3-hour show, but there's a lot more meat to come. I was intrigued by this. If we hit this link here, I didn't realize that the Jeffrey Epstein FBI vault file is almost as long as the Hillary Clinton FBI vault
That's
file.
the wrong one. This one?
Yeah.
Well,
check this out.
Vault files of a feather, Charles.
21 parts.
That's a lot of parts.
So, I mean, I suspect that we're going to find out that there are many more parts here. So suddenly, you know, from a tactile standpoint, I obviously did not arrange for anybody to put focus on Jeffrey Epstein. But now, where before we've been just pounding the table and saying it's Clinton Foundation stuff, it's Clinton Foundation stuff, now we have the Epstein thing back to the fore, and we have the convenient fact that Dershowitz claimed that Jeffrey Epstein was intimately involved in the creation, I think he meant of the Clinton Foundation, or maybe the international aspects of the Clinton Foundation, and or the Clinton Global Initiative. Okay, let's see. Let's see how many flights, you know, exactly where were Jeffrey Epstein's planes going from January 20th, 2001 to the present.
I'll tell you something else, Charles. It would seem that my question to Alan Dershowitz has raised a very important point, because if Dershowitz says that he was on the island but never on the plane, but that flight manifest has his name written on it, it's just a fact that one of them is lying, either Dershowitz or the flight manifest, and it calls a lot of things into question. Certainly someone is lying, right? One or the other.
Exactly. So if we go into the next slide. I'll go quickly through this because we've covered some of this before. Instead of, you know, lollygagging about and whining about the state of the Obama Foundation and the Clinton Foundation and whatever, I think we need to take a big step back from this and say, are we even sure that the American public has all the records of presidents who operated in the internet age? Specifically, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and now Donald Trump. Oh, who knows?
Didn't George Bush say that the internet was a series of tubes? I don't think we have to worry about him too much.
Well, no, a whole bunch of George W. Bush emails did go disappearing.
Yeah, down the tube.
Yeah. But the point is, you see, what I think could happen is it's like the case we're on with Hillary Clinton now. She says there are 33,000 emails. How do we know it's 30? Other people say it's 600.
That's the coded message that it's not 33,000 emails. That's her little steganography there.
Right. So this is an article. The first article is actually by Tom Lipscomb, which alleges that in June of 2018, the National Archives were in crisis.
I don't think I believe anything that Tom Lipscomb says, though.
Right, but I do believe the National Archives could have been in crisis, because I think it just talks about this article talks about what the archivist has to do to get ready for a transition to a new administration. It's not like you can just walk out the front door of the White House as Bill Clinton and, you know, you're in charge of packing up and deciding what's a presidential record, what isn't a presidential record. Teams of people have been involved in this for months. So where are the records of those teams of people? Where's the proof that any of these presidential records were actually carefully guarded? Why did you send presidential records out of Washington, D.C. to a car dealership in Little Rock before?
Did they do that?
Absolutely. They did it before you even left. Why did you do that multiple different times? And I think that's a big set of questions, and Tom does not specifically raise those questions, but we do need to understand exactly what happened to these presidential records and what today in 2019 are presidential records. If you illegally start using umaabedin@yahoo.com to transact government business,
does that count as a presidential record?
You know, on behalf of, let's say, Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama, I think that probably does count. If Sidney Blumenthal is running around the world, you know, claiming to act for Hillary Clinton or for Barack Obama in secret negotiations, are his communications presidential records, yes or no, or records that should be guarded? So if we go back into the slide, you don't have to hit, if you want more information, you can go into the link there, but it says presidential records are documentary materials created or received by the president's immediate staff, or a unit or individual of the executive office of the president. So I don't know if Hillary Clinton's communications would be deemed to be presidential records, but I do know that any communications between the president and Hillary Clinton are presidential records.
Even if he uses a fake email address?
Exactly. So, and you notice it says documentary materials are defined as including but not limited to other electronic or mechanical recordations, whether in analog, digital, or any other form. This is drafted in '78, when you had DARPANet, but you did not have the internet.
I wonder, did they even have digital audio recording in 1978? I suppose they must have.
It says analog, digital, or. Yeah. But the point is, so the records, these emails of Hillary, especially Hillary communicating directly with Barack Obama and arguably with his immediate staff, how many of those do we actually have? You know, and it's a big, serious crime to destroy presidential records, right? These records are the exclusive property of we the people. They're not Bill Clinton's property or Barack Obama's property. The deal isn't that you only make $450,000 a year as president with $50,000 of expense money, because everybody knows that when you get out of office, you can monetize all the information that you gleaned, all the secret ways that you could communicate with world leaders and their staffs and rich executives, investors around the world. You know, it's not that you get to monetize all that to make up for the fact that you're only making $450,000. All of these communications should be in the custody and control of the National Archives. And it's not as if when you set up a presidential library, as Obama now is doing, you can stand up and say, all right, I'm still a charity, even though the National Archives still has to take custody and control of all the physical records, right? That doesn't make any sense. It makes sense to allow a presidential library to be a charity if you're going to lessen the burden of government by taking care in a logical way, opening it up to the public, of all of these records that would occupy a large amount of space that would need to be heated and cooled and protected and insured, and you're going to do that at the expense of the charity. Okay, you deserve federal tax exemption for it, but not to create a mecca for followers of Obama or people who want to be organizers, whether at the Clinton Library or the Obama Library. That's
excellent use of the word mecca.
Intended.
I got it.
So the big question here, you know, if the FBI, we're raising a lot of questions for the FBI, but a big question for you is how many emails and messages were exchanged one way or the other between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama? I want to know the answer to that question. I don't need to know the content, right? I'm sure a lot of it's classified, but I want to know how many were exchanged. I would also be interested to know just how true it is that Bill Clinton doesn't use the internet. I find that difficult to believe.
Porn on the internet.
Exactly. I think, exactly.
I think Bill Clinton is the one sending all these porn emails into the chat.
He could be one. He's probably also on one of those Ukrainian bride sites or whatever.
I think I know who it is.
So if we go to the next page, we'll go quickly through this, but there's a lot of information that actually, one big thing I only realized when I checked it yesterday is that the act was amended in 2014. And the act gave the incoming president a lot of power to deny requests for information. It gave more power than they had before. So probably in 2014, Barack Obama and his crew assumed that a Democrat would succeed him. And they wanted to give more power to that person to stop any inquiries into the 8 years of Barack Obama. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, at least from their perspective. And now Donald Trump, as president, has enormous power to decide, which of these records should be shielded, which should be opened up. And it's high time, or if not past time, for Donald Trump to make the declassification decisions about the Horowitz report and all that, but also more broadly than that, into Fast and Furious, into these various scandals that we haven't been covering. And we look at this and we say, the President of the United States and their team decided they wanted to amend the Presidential Records Act in 2014 as a priority. Okay, what's the background to that? Who led this effort? Where are the emails about this, exposing the rationale? Where's the legislative history that would have been written up? Where are the hearings? How did this come to place, and why in 2014? Were they setting up, laying the groundwork to make sure that they had numerous insurance policies in the event that Hillary Clinton or whoever would have been the Democratic nominee did not win?
Oh, crap.
What? You good?
It's a constant assault on the show right here. So whoever is the idiot that's doing this needs to get a life and go away. But what they're trying to do is overwhelm the show.
Mm-hmm.
I got to stop them from doing that.
Well, we can go through I've set this up on purpose. The last 3 pages,
Don't speed through it, Charles. Please take your time. I'm handling it.
Okay.
Do you need me to go to the next page?
I do.
Okay.
So one of our great friends let us know that part 34 of the Hillary Rodham Clinton FBI vault file dropped late on Friday afternoon. So I read the file that night, and then again carefully over the last 2 days.
Wow, you read incredibly quickly, Charles.
I got no life.
That's not true.
But this is fascinating information in here. And before we get into some of the detail, basically what it's showing is that even late in 2015, in December 2015, January 2016, even then, the State Department was vigorously resisting information requests that had come to them from various parties. Against that background, if we look here, here's the Judicial Watch. This is the deposition of Heather Samuelson.
Who is she again?
Well, it turns out she's somebody who was just a friend of Doug Band, who was inserted into the process of trying to deal with the Hillary Clinton missing emails. And she asks a whole bunch of questions and she's asked and answers a whole bunch of questions.
They hate questions.
Yeah, but this is on the record now under oath, and it's not looking very good for Heather Samuelson and for the people around the Clintons. Very clearly, I think what happened is the Clintons knew they were in trouble. They knew that there was a lot of incriminating information out there. They did not understand how far and wide email and electronic data can be disseminated all over the place, and they were doing their best at damage control. So they wanted to go and get a pliant team of people in to work on this project of making it possible for Hillary Clinton to be president by suppressing and destroying and bleach bidding. And I think back, Jason, to our first cartoon.
Yeah.
I mean, how prescient was that? That
Right.
I mean, a core of this whole a core of this whole effort was actually to keep the idea that you had the Clinton Foundation email toilet bowl server system, the Clinton toilet bowl server system was the place where 100% of all email traffic was going to be routed during her presidency, and that she would hang on to all these records for almost 2 years after she left, with the ability of manipulating and monetizing all this information is astounding to me. But Judicial Watch is working doggedly to get this information out in the public domain. This is 118 pages. I have not read it, but I've read extracts from it that is very, very damaging. But if we go back into the slide itself, remember we had, I wrote a piece in LifeSet, and don't pull it up because when you do, you get all kinds of,
What happened to LifeSet? I haven't heard that much about it lately.
I think it's just moving along. But I wrote a piece suggesting that people ought to look into and interrogate the senior FBI agent, Giacalone, last name, and find out who, in fact, walked into the Washington field office, FBI, in January of 2016. Who was that person, and why were they concerned? But here we have a letter from Peter Strzok, excerpts from it's page 119 of this FBI vault file for people who want to look at it. Okay, and note that it says they want to preserve and produce records associated with ClintonEmail.com. And now, this is the standard Clinton trick. They get you to focus over here at ClintonEmail.com. What if there are other domain names? Okay, and I'm certain there are. Right? We know there was ClintonGlobalInitiative.com, for example. Maybe that was used, and I suspect it was used to set up various and sundry Clinton Global Initiative annual meetings. And remember, in the Clinton Global Initiative annual meeting, what you're doing is you're charging a relatively low entry price for a grifter. You're saying, give us $20,000, and you could spend 3 days at a party here in New York with all these other current and former leaders of the world and billionaires and media types, and you can grift to your heart's content $20,000 for 3 days. I mean, that's cheap.
Deal. Yeah.
That's pretty cheap, actually. So they focus on the period January 21st, 2009 to February 1st, 2013. That's when Hillary was there. What they should have been focusing on is before she got there and after she left as well, because we find in this document, and I'm going to leave it to people to find it for themselves, late in the document we find reference to the fact that they opened up a State Department account for Hillary Clinton on December 5th, 2008. She was only through committee in the Senate January 13th, 2009. Why were they opening up an account for her the 5th of December, 2008? What was behind that?
Yeah.
Where's the internal communications on that? What other communications might there have been well before that on the many Clinton Foundation projects that were working in league with PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or USAID, or other portions of the government, or the Global Fund, or the UN? Where are all those emails? So how come they only start January 21st, 2009, only cover the period when she leaves? They leave out in the document itself, there's space for my count, about 5 to 7 people are redacted, and they say you got to comply immediately, but in red here, don't disclose the existence of this request.
Yeah, you know what? There's a lot of people saying that, don't disclose the existence of this request. I know a lawyer whose wife said that to David Seaman.
Yeah, and so when you look at this and you say, now, wait a minute, what we see here, and we go back to Cohen and we go back to other people who are involved in racketeering and money laundering often find their front and back doors broken down at 5 o'clock in the morning, being raided by teams of FBI agents. In the case of Manafort or Stone, there were greater than the number of people who captured Osama bin Laden. Yeah. I mean, you find these massive assaults. In contrast, it's with Hillary. Okay, Sister Hillary, you can leave your job as Secretary of State. You can keep all the government property. You've got a campaign to finance. You're going to have to find rich people and other people you could reward once you become president or threaten if you become president. So you need a lot of time to sift through all these records that you created from 21st January 2009 to the 1st of February 2013. Have at it. You know, when Congress subpoenas you, you can bleach bit, you can destroy, you can lie about it. You know, we don't mind. Well, in this part 34, I'm not technically proficient enough to really grasp the significance of it. But if you go in the early to the middle portion of it, there's lots of information recounting timelines of who was involved, changing file names and moving information and destroying information. They give you the chronology. They have a way of doing it, and some of the forensic results are revealed in this part 34. So if we go to the next page, here's an internal FBI memorandum on the 4th of January, flagging, of course, that there had been FBI preservation and production requests on the 4th, 11th, and 15th of December 2015. Now, why is that significant? In this time frame, Hillary and Bernie and others are getting set for actual primary votes. And Hillary's points and talking points around Hillary are all that you know, this is just a matter, it's part of a normal national security review, it's not an investigation into emails, don't worry about that. That was said, if it was said 100 times, it was said 1,000 times through all the talking heads and all you refer to social engineering. Okay? And I just don't understand how Comey, then as head of the FBI, would tolerate that. How can you have people characterizing a criminal investigation, which this was, an advanced, though suppressed, criminal investigation, been going on for months. Democrats should have known it. I mean, if Democrats knew the full extent of these investigations, they would recoil in horror at the fact that they allowed Hillary Clinton to be the presidential nominee in 2006.
They know about it, don't they?
Some do and some don't. There must be one senior honest Democrat who would look at this and say, no, we don't tolerate this anymore. And remember, we know from other sources that the Horowitz report, that by January, date unknown, 2016, the FBI, in theory, opened at multiple Clinton Foundation investigations. The same time this was going on, where they're saying, you know, we're not going to let you go full bore on the Clinton Foundation, but we're going to restrict the degree to which we investigate mishandling of classified information, because that would really sink Hillary. We don't want to sink her. We need her in there as President of the United States. So this is interesting. They come back and they say they do searches, but they found out that people had the email boxes that they wanted to see, but they indicated they did not have access to the mailboxes, because whatever S/ES means, information technology staff manages these servers, and that, you know, so they found that some people had these email boxes, including, it would seem, archive. There's something called HRC archive.
Huh.
And this is the first time we hear about that. Then there's also something CESC communications or something like that
Clinton
at
Executive
Service Corp, etc. So in this part 34, I would encourage people to comb through it for themselves. I believe what they're saying here is that in early January, they knew there was suspicious stuff involving Cheryl Mills and some other person, probably Hillary, but we don't know, and yet they couldn't find stuff about, by my count, maybe 5 other names. Now, here we have, just if you do a search on Cheryl Mills in the WikiLeaks Podesta files, if you hit that link, okay, I have certainly not checked. If we make it a little smaller, it'll go.
Sorry, Charles.
That's okay.
1 second. This is.
And notice here's cheryl.mills@gmail.com.
That's as small as I can make it actually right now.
Okay, well, maybe on your screen you can see that, I don't know the number, but I believe there are 3,000 emails or 3,000 WikiLeaks things involving Cheryl Mills. Every single one of them needs to be gone through. What was Cheryl Mills actually doing when she was working for Hillary Clinton? She was also, for a time, on the board of the Clinton Foundation. Was she pre-positioning, gaining contacts for Hillary and for herself? Was she getting ready to establish her Black Ivy Group, which we're going to show you in a second, which is an investment and advisory firm, or maybe principally an investment firm? And I draw your attention on this one, that the third name down is tina@presidentclinton.com. Okay, there's another domain name, presidentclinton.com.
Wow, have we seen that before today?
We may have, but I don't remember seeing it. And then we have, notice this, ccm@chelseaoffice.com. So all these, there's a proliferation of these addresses that we're not going to focus on. We're just going to look at the ... at clintonemail.com. And I think the scope of the investigation of the FBI, if it hasn't already been widened, it needs to be significantly widened.
Yeah.
So we go back into the slide. Here's this Black Ivy group that Cheryl created, and I have my doubts as to whether she created it after she left or whether she wasn't inside the State Department, going to Haiti, traveling to Africa, getting all these contacts. And
Why
then
is it called Black Ivy? That sounds like kind of like occultish.
Yeah, well, could be. So, but if can you bring it up, or?
I can't. We're on the verge of being overwhelmed.
All right, we don't want that.
No.
So,
which one?
This one here.
Cheryl Mills, Black Ivy. There it is.
Prior to Black Ivy, she serves as chief of staff, where she managed foreign policy and operational priorities of a $55 billion agency, employing 20,000 officials across 180 countries. I don't think she did that. I think there is a career group of people that's in place, and yes, she had the titles that she had, but I'm not sure that she has disclosed all of her private interests while she was involved with the Clinton Foundation, while she was involved with the State Department. I think she's common law married to somebody who has a charity that the Clinton Foundation has worked with as well. And so, this is a person who needs to be dry cleaned, and this is a firm that needs to be dry cleaned, because notice they have this, what they do, Jason, is our tagline, endeavors that matter.
Yeah.
As opposed to politics, where you chase endeavors that don't matter.
Yes.
But I mean, it's amazing to me. I wonder how much they paid for that idea,
slogan.
and who do they compete against? I mean, do they really think that Goldman Sachs doesn't focus, or Blackstone Group, or other people that don't focus on endeavors that matter? How did she get all these investment deals? How did she get the leg up? I have a funny feeling and a sneaking suspicion that they originated through Clinton Foundation and State Department activities.
Yeah.
If you go back into the slide, we don't need to pull this one up. This is just all the FARA stuff. But here's a story. I used Ortel's first law. You punch the name of something in with fraud and what comes up. And here you get this story. That's just the preceding link. That's okay. You get now. This is American intelligence media, which is
we can't show this site, Charles. These guys are idiots and social engineers. This is Douglas Gabriel.
Oh, is it Douglas Gabriel?
Sorry, yeah, I wouldn't believe anything on that site.
Well,
even if some of it is true, this is how these social engineers operate. They put out some degree of truthful information, and then American intelligence media is a disinformation operation. Douglas Gabriel is extremely dishonest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they know the people who are doing this chat attack on the show.
Well, that I'm sure that's true, but let's lose the link. But the point of it is, though, there are more than one stories like that out there, and I suspect that if you really teased out and said, all right, when did Cheryl Mills start acquiring contacts in Haiti or Tanzania or Ghana or wherever it is? Did she register under FARA? What business arrangements did she have, or did she have to make in order to get each deal done that she has done in Black Ivy. I think when you do the type of rigorous work that, let's say, has been done on Paul Manafort in Ukraine and elsewhere, it's not going to be a pretty picture. So if we go to the final slide, which is next, another internal memo. All right, here they say that they've got files for Jake Sullivan, Cheryl Mills, and Uma Abedin. But then they talk about, they have one thumb drive, and they have communications, and they're looking for the date range of 9 September 2009 to 19 October 2009. That happens to be precisely when the Clinton Global Initiative was held as new CGI. The Clinton Global Initiative, Inc. was organized on the 4th of September 2009. The meetings were held in New York in September. We'll show you that in a second. Do we honestly believe that there are no emails having to do with, asking, Obama to show up, telling other people that Obama was going to show up, you should show up, doing deals to, coax people into the room? Look at this. If you hit this link in here, this is from their website, and if you go down the page a little bit, this is from that meeting. That's Obama and Clinton at the opening plenary session. Okay, and of course there are going to be.
Oh, what happened?
I don't know. We'll have to read. Maybe we'll read about it in the book.
Exactly. Yeah.
But did you hit a wrong link or something?
I don't believe so. Maybe it was just a live stream and it doesn't stick around after the show is over. But here, let's just go back.
It's funny because I was able to not watch it, but I was able to at least see the landing page.
Well, I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah, it brings me to that.
But if you don't click it, if you just stay on the landing page.
We can do that.
Yeah. And so there's a whole bunch in here, and I've got to believe there's a lot of evidence, and I've been saying through multiple broadcasts that the heart of the Clinton Foundation fraud is the Clinton Global Initiative. The core of the Clinton Foundation fraud is the family, but the heart of it is this Clinton Global Initiative. That's where they decide who gets to go. They close the thing off to people other than their friends. They hold meetings in New York when the UN General Assembly is in session. So there are lots of world leaders around. It's easy to corral them for this meeting, and you grift away. You grift to your heart's content. Because there's no audits, there are no unconflicted trustees, there's nobody who has an interest in exposing this actual fraud within the group. So it operated hiding in plain sight starting late 2004, right up until its most recent meeting. So if we go back to the slides, one thing we've talked about before, if we look in here at that FBI Vault one, page 11. And I think if you go down the page a little bit, you can just click to the page.
Sorry, there's just so many of these coming in
That's
right
right.
now. It's slowing down the computer. So this is the moment where people need to go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become sponsors of the show. We're gonna basically this has got to be an individual that's doing this. I do not believe that this is random. I haven't seen these messages anywhere but here on Sunday with Charles. So someone is deliberately trying to prevent you from seeing the show. And one of the ways that you can avoid that is if you're watching on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. If we could build that network to thousands strong, we might not even need to broadcast on YouTube anymore. And all these people who want it to be free so that trolls and people who want to come in here with disruptions can be here. Well, this is This is what we get. Anyway.
So this is page 11 of dump 6, part 6. It was a memo drafted on the 22nd of February 2016 by the FBI. Evidence of Hillary Clinton's misuse of classified documents. In incident type, it says criminal activity. It says enclosed are the following items: walk-in Clinton documents received on January 27th, 2016. Okay? I would have thought that if you go down the page a little bit, it describes what happened, that the person walked in, had sent evidence to Comey earlier in 2016. We have the letter, and he or she had asked for a response, or at least recognition that the stuff went in. He explained he was a longtime government employee, provided a resume, evaluation reports. He offered to be interviewed in a SCIF. I guess it is a he. He offered to be interviewed in a SCIF so he could talk at higher classification level to further explain other evidence he had. Okay, this happened. The walk-in happened on January 27th, 2016, but the decision to write it up was deferred until February 22nd, 2016. I'm not in the FBI, but in business, if we had a practice of keeping notes about something, and you waited this long to write it up for the file, I'd be furious.
Yeah, of course.
These are crucial moments. This is like when vital primaries are happening. Obviously they didn't want this to leak out, because had Bernie Sanders people gotten wind of this, that it wasn't a matter, it wasn't a normal security review. Here's a senior State Department person sending a letter to Comey saying, hey, Dopey, you got to look at this stuff. This is serious criminal stuff. What gives? What's taking so long here? And this person may have been involved in interactions. In the Part 34, there are multiple meetings involving multiple parties across the government spectrum in and around December 2015, January 2016. This person may have been watching this and saying, hey, they're trying to stall this. They're trying to make sure that the public doesn't find out about this. I want justice. And we have talked about this. I don't have the part number in my head, but we have the actual portions of the actual letter to Comey, which we've done presentations on in the past. It's from one of the earlier parts. And the letter basically says, I've been in the State Department a long time. We serve under the Constitution. That's the highest law of the land. We don't basically work for one president or another, or one party or another, but that's not the way this is being handled. We're being, when I raise objections, I'm being told, the president interprets the law, you work for him. Forget the Constitution. I mean, this goes to the heart of the crisis that we're in right now. And if we go back to the slide. We also have this, which I hope I was able to, this one here. May not work the way I'd hoped.
Is this?
Yeah, that's it. Let's just go down the page a little bit. Yes, yeah. This is, if you go through it, it talks about basically, we've talked about it before, here it is, I think, that stuff is produced, here, and stuff basically goes missing. This is, in a nutshell, we've done several shows on this where we mentioned it. There's evidence that came to light in 2019 that materials that had been put into the evidence room at the FBI, I think in the Washington field office, were both tampered with and are missing.
No.
Okay.
First they tampered with it, then they threw it away.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the kind of stuff where, I would have thought at the very highest portion of the FBI, either within it or around it, were people who should be assuming that some percentage of the FBI is actually crooked, and they're going to try to root those people out. And it's enormously, we think about it, the largest financial fraud ever attempted, largest charity frauds ever attempted. If you're prepared to get involved with frauds that can be denominated in the tens or hundreds of billions of dollars or more, you're certainly willing to buy off the person in the evidence room, which is in how many different movies, including recently, it's on television, reruns of Reds. essential feature.
Movies. Didn't the FBI have a problem with their DNA lab where they were sending people to prison with false DNA evidence?
Right. So I mean, if you're dealing in frauds that are denominated in the many billions, you don't mind paying somebody $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, whatever, to make that evidence disappear, make that thumb drive disappear, make those emails disappear, bleach bit the hell out of stuff, make records that are in the system magically disappear, and there needs to be a thorough house cleaning of the FBI.
Yeah, or an actual dismantling of it and the creation of a new agency. Fire everyone involved, and the new thing, one of the requirements will be you cannot have worked for the FBI previously.
Well, except there are some good people in the FBI, many good people, and so you would hate
They need to take action now, Charles, because we've been saying that for a long time, and we're 2 years into our last chance to solve this. So if the good people at the FBI are listening, now's the time.
Yeah.
You gotta get in touch with the president. What should people who are good people in the FBI do to break this deadlock?
I assume they're already doing it. I believe there are grand juries open. I believe there are government investigations around the world. As I said, I take this. We could go back into the slide. I take the Epstein arrest.
Yeah, that sounds good. That does seem like they're doing stuff.
And the bottom line, it's a good question you ask, is I'd anticipated it, I think, in the slide. We're today in 2019, our national debt has more than doubled from around, call it 10 to around 22.
It's really huge.
And that's bad, but even worse than that is the fact that this low interest rate policy and it's okay to always be spending more money than you have, has led the entire American economy, not just individuals, but businesses and banks and state governments and the federal government, to borrow a lot more money than we normally should be able to repay, particularly if interest rates eventually ever go up again. So we're not in a moment where you can say, yeah, this is fine, we could do this for another 10 years. No, we've got to solve this. And we've got to ask the number one question. It's not the Clinton Global Initiative. Who is protecting the Clinton Graft Initiatives, CGI? That's a better way of thinking about it. Not Clinton Global, Clinton Graft Initiatives. And who is allowing the former President of the United States, Barack Obama, to emulate the Clinton Graft Initiative? This has got to stop. And I hope that we are close to seeing some real action here. I'll be watching very closely what happens overnight, and particularly what happens tomorrow. You mentioned, Jason, that there's stuff going on tomorrow at the courthouse.
Well, they've announced that Epstein is going to be arraigned over there, and I guess we will see what the charges will be. I think he's in a lot of trouble. I don't think they would have brought this back around, just for their health. I think it's really interesting to see, Charles, that this attack that's happening, I don't think it would be happening if what we were talking about were baseless or harmless to those that would engage in such pointless efforts. I mean, they had their fun. It distracted me. It impacted the show. I hope they think they're smart. It's not going to carry on. And I really hope, Charles, that our viewers who are watching will send a message to the people that would attack a presentation like this by trying to disrupt it with this sort of idiotic material. This is not random. This is happening on purpose. And I really do believe that the only way that people can stop it is by becoming sponsors of the show and letting these trolls know that actions like this show our viewers that there are people out there who are bent on doing evil, who want to prevent information coming out that could put people like Jeffrey Epstein in jail, that could put people like Bill and Hillary Clinton in jail. They'd rather put their stupid fake pornography messages into our show and prevent you from presenting this very important information, or disrupt me from supporting you in doing that. And whoever is behind this needs to take some time tonight to look at themselves in the mirror and ask them if they're proud of what they're doing. Ask themselves if they're proud of what they're doing. And I hope that people will sponsor the show so that this type of activity makes it stronger, makes Crowdsource the Truth stronger, and allows me to carry on, because I don't care about this. They can keep doing this. We'll just stop it. I'll come up with better methods, and people watching will figure out how to, get to channels that we're using that aren't susceptible to this. But this is what's ruining the environment of, quote, free information. So this is just another social engineering tactic. Fake lawsuits, fake users putting in fake messages. It's interesting, I was talking about this morning on a video I did about identifying social engineering operations, so this is another thing. Anyway, hopefully tomorrow we'll get some very interesting information about what's going to happen to Jeffrey Epstein. And I apologize I wasn't more engaged during today's show, Charles, but we've got to make sure that these trolls do not take out the stream, which they have previously demonstrated the capability to do. So
now there were some "this just ends." I don't know.
Oh, right. Yes, let's get to those. We had some good ones, didn't we? Now, I've been, again, a little kind of distracted, so I'm not sure where I stored those here, but well, here, I got an easier way to get to them. This just in.
I didn't send it with that title.
No, I know. I do have them, but see, I look away from the screen for a moment, and these trolls come back. They are very persistent. I wonder if they're sitting in a Volkswagen somewhere in Mount Shasta. Anyway, so this just in. It just, it really does render the computer very difficult to use. Okay, here's the first one, Charles. Please explain away.
Yeah, this is just, I don't know if, can we hit it so people can listen to it or no?
Yes. Or that these trolls do not.
This is.
Whoops, we got to get the audio of me off. You see, it really does require full engagement of my attention to do this properly. And when I, okay, so we got that audio muted, I believe, I hope. Oh boy. You know what? Is it going?
It's going, yeah.
We're not hearing it, are we?
I think you had the sound. Is it on?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it here. Yeah, I mean, it's just blitzing the computer right now.
All right, well.
No, I really want to get this. This shouldn't be so difficult to make it work.
I guess it's Hannity speaking. Yeah, Hannity speaking with
I think that, I believe.
Got a lot of problems coming up in my.
Bill Clinton.
Nice guy.
Oh boy.
Got a lot of problems coming up, in my opinion, with the famous island with Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of problems.
Okay, there, we got it.
Good.
Epstein's got a lot of problems coming up with the famous island. I mean, Donald Trump does say some really awesome things at times, and that was one of them for sure.
And I think the other "this just in" had to do with Donald Trump actually being very supportive of.
Right, we had a tweet from one of the lawyers of a victim of Jeffrey Epstein, and that lawyer has said that there was no one who's been more helpful to them than Donald Trump. So I don't know if he would do that were he thinking there might be a risk of being implicated in the matter, but let's see if we can get that tweet here.
Yeah, there it is.
So this is the lawyer, right, for one of the Epstein victims.
Is it the lawyer?
Or, oh no, sorry, he's not the lawyer. He's referencing a comment from the lawyer. I think that, yeah, I mean, we're getting hammered over here, Charles.
That's okay.
Give us a summary of what the guy said. It's just going to be too difficult
Yeah,
to
it's
find
okay.
this
Well,
thing now.
it's just that The lawyer said that Donald Trump was by far and away the most supportive of getting the truth out to
Right.
what really happened here, and why the injustice of these victims who apparently were not consulted appropriately as Acosta and others negotiated the settlement that let Epstein temporarily off the hook.
Yeah.
So people have been assuming, particularly in the mainstream quotes media this morning and a little bit last night, that this story on Epstein would hurt Trump because there is a comment back in I think 2002 that Trump thought that Epstein then was a, quote, very fine person. And of course, Trump is well known for, in the past, gallivanting around. But that's not my read on this. When I look at the facts here, I think that Epstein has got the most to lose. The people around Epstein who may have engaged in nefarious activities in the hospitality of Epstein have got a lot to worry about. And I think Donald Trump has less to worry about.
I agree.
So
I think we'll find out more tomorrow. Well, Charles,
I think we're done.
I think we're close to done. I need to try and figure out some more creative ways to continue blocking these people. Really pathetic that we have got losers hanging around with nothing better to do than troll this show. But as people are pointing out, I think it is an indicator that we're over the target. And there it is.
There it is.
Whatever, let them troll away. Charles, thank you for a very good presentation. Despite this distraction, I have a number of ideas for how we're going to address this for next week. Thanks everybody for watching. Please become a sponsor of Crowdsource the Truth. If the people who are behind these actions realize that they are futile and that Crowdsource the Truth is just growing in support and sponsorship, well, that's a great message to send them. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.